Hi folks, this is Karim Raouf from IT Visualizer channel. Today we will continue our lab Marvel and DC United. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We were planning to capture an image from an Azure virtual machine, and after capturing this image we will deploy it through creating newly Azure virtual machines and applying this captured image on them. Okay, so I will show you a graph concerning this process, but before capturing an image we need to make Sysprep to the Windows operating system installed within this Azure virtual machine. Okay, so we make a Sysprep. This was the first step, and then after that we make a Sysprep. The operating system is shut down for the Azure virtual machine, okay, but not the virtual machine itself. The virtual machine is still powered on, but the Windows 10 operating system installed on this Azure virtual machine is shut down after the Sysprep operation, okay. And then after that we will create an Azure storage account. This is simply a space on a Microsoft server. Okay, we will take a space on one of the hard disks of the Microsoft server and install on it or run on it the Azure Powershell module, because after shutting down the operating system for the Azure virtual machine we need to take or capture an image from it after making Sysprep. So to have the PowerShell running we need to have it installed on the hard disk, okay, because the virtual machine or the system of the virtual machine is shut down. So we will take a space from one of the Microsoft servers, one of the hard disks of the Microsoft server, okay, and put the PowerShell module on it and run it. This is called Azure storage account. This is simply like taking a Google Drive account. For example, if you register for Google email, he will give you a space on one of Google servers, and its space approximately 15 gigabyte. Okay, so this is called Google Drive account. Okay, so this is the same. We will create an Azure storage account and run the Azure PowerShell on it. Okay, and after we run this Azure PowerShell we will begin working. We will deallocate power off the Azure virtual machine using the PowerShell module. So as I said before, Sysprep, the process of Sysprep, it will shut down the Windows 10 only, not the Azure virtual machine itself. So it shuts down the operating system, not the Azure virtual machine itself. So we have a command called deallocate. We will run it on the PowerShell Azure module to power off this virtual machine, and then after that we will generalize the Azure virtual machine. This is something like Sysprep for the Windows operating system. We make a Sysprep for the Azure virtual machine itself, not the operating system of the operating system on the Azure virtual machine installed, which was Windows 10. Okay, I will show you a graph by this, don't worry. And at the end we capture an image from the Azure virtual machine. Okay, and after capturing the image, this is done through the PowerShell. We have another way to capture an image of the Azure virtual machine by using the Azure portal and not using the Azure PowerShell. So this is briefly what we have discussed before in the previous video. Please refer to it to know more, but I will show you a small graph discussing this process. So here we have our laptop, and we log into the Azure portal, and then we create an Azure virtual machine. We give it a name and an IP address, and then we install the necessary programs that we need. So Google programs like Chrome, Adobe Reader, VLC, 7-Zip, Classic Shell, and we change some Windows setting. We display this PC and control panel icon on desktop, increase virtual RAM. This is simply taking a space of the local hard disk of the machine and make it to act as a RAM. Okay, and the best practice is to have the virtual RAM double the physical RAM. So if you have, for example, physical RAM of 5 gigabyte, so as I said before, after that we will increase the virtual RAM. This is we have discussed it, and then we install the Arabic and English keyboard, and then change the currency and date and time to reflect Cairo time zone, and to have the currency from US dollar to LE. Okay, sorry. And then after that we will go to this location, see Windows System 32 and then Sysprep, and then we will run the Sysprep. Here we will click on generalize and then shut down. This will shut down the operating system, and then after that we will access the Azure PowerShell module from the virtual machine section. This PowerShell module will run on a Azure storage account. As I said before, Azure storage account is something like Google Drive account. So we will run this PowerShell on or from Azure storage account, and then we will begin applying a couple of scripts or a couple of lines. The first line is to deallocate this to power off the virtual machine, and then generalize this to Sysprep the virtual machine. We have two Syspreps, one Sysprep for the Windows 10 operating system within the Azure virtual machine, and then generalize this is something like Sysprepping the Azure virtual machine itself. Okay, so after we Sysprep the Azure virtual machine, we will create an image. Okay, so this is the process, and at the end we have the image created. It will call PC Marvel template, and then when we create a new virtual machine, we will browse for all public and private images. So here we will, instead of choosing Windows 10 or any operating system, we will click on browse all public and private images, and then we will go to my items. Here we will see our image. So this will be applied to our newly created virtual machine. Okay, this is simply the process. But another thing we need to know, what is Sysprep? Here we see that we have Sysprep our Windows 10 operating system on this Azure virtual machine, and then generalize this is also like Sysprep. So what is Sysprep? Sysprep simply it is this process. We will show you all. Let's assume here from this process that this is me, I am Karim. Okay, and then I have lost my memory. Okay, and then here I have lost my memory, unknown, I don't know who I am anymore, and then I have been cloned 3 clones. Okay, and then after that, after I have been cloned, I have been impersonation, or some people will impersonate my body. So here my name is Muhammad, I was named before Karim, and this is Haitham, I was named before Karim, and this is Nasser. Okay, so the 3 are typical a clone of me, but every one of the clones will have a different personality. Okay, so they are a clone of me, typical clone of me, but everyone will have different personality, different names, different ID. Okay, so this is simply the process of Sysprep. This is the same, but in a real or this to explain what is Sysprep. So if we go to the Sysprep, we can see that this is our machine. We have all necessary programs installed on it and Windows setting. We will make Sysprep. This is something like lost my memory, and here we will see that the machine, it is doesn't know or it is unknown. Okay, and we will take an image from it, take an image from this virtual machine, and then we will clone it or make 3 clones from it, or we'll make, okay, we will make, sorry, here we will not clone it. Here we will create 3 virtual Azure machine newly, or we create new 3 new Azure virtual machines. All of them are unknown. They are a typical copy of the machine that we have taken image from. Okay, sorry guys, here we will have this PC, we will make a Sysprep, and then this machine will be unknown, and then after that we will take an image from it, and then after that we will create 3 newly Azure virtual machines, and then we will take the image and impersonate or make them on these Azure virtual machines. So this will be PC Marvel 18, PC Marvel 19, PC Marvel 20. So this is the same process. Okay, here this machine we make Sysprep, so we will make it unknown, and then we will take an image, and then we will create 3 new Azure virtual machines, and then we'll apply this image on the 3 newly created Azure virtual machines. Okay, so this is simply the Sysprep process. Sysprep, its definition to generalize the setting for the PC to make it doesn't contain any ID concerning the machine we take image from. So we basically, with Sysprep, we are removing PC Marvel 17 name from any Windows setting or any program setting. Okay, so this machine to be unknown. Okay, so this is what we have done in the previous video. In this video we will discuss another thing. We will begin creating the DC Comics domain. We have before created the Marvel domain with all of its characters, heroes, groups, users, computers, and everything. So in this lab we will begin creating the DC Comics domain, which will contain Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Okay, so we will begin creating this domain. Okay, on Azure. Okay, but here we will see a small graph of this domain. So here we can see this is the address space. Okay, we have discussed this before when creating the Marvel domain, so we will repeat this process again. We will repeat what we have done with the Marvel domain, and we will do it with DC Comics domain. So here we have the network space address for the Marvel for the DC Comics domain will be 10.0.0/16, and the DNS servers will be 10.0.1.4 and 10.0.1.5. so this is the network space address, and this is the DNS servers that will be distributed to any virtual machine created within this network address space. Okay, and the network address space will be named DCVNet, okay, or DC Comics Virtual Net. Okay, and after that we will create our first network, network subnet. It will be 10.0.1.0/24. This is our first subnet. We will call it DC domain IPR. This is our first subnet, and then in this subnet we will create two virtual machines. Everyone will act as a domain controller. Okay, so this is the network card for the first domain controller. It is named according to the name of the virtual machine. So we can see that the network card is named DC01. This is the name of our virtual machine, and 240, this is another thing for the network card. So this is simply the name of the network card and the PC that it is attached to, okay, or the computer it is attached to. So this network card is attached to the DC01 virtual machine or DC01 domain controller. And our first domain controller will be DCC01, and it 10.0.1.4. This will be a domain control and the DNS. Let's note that this also is put in the configuration of the network space address. Okay, so and then we will have some firewall rules concerning this virtual machine. Okay, so these firewall rules, we say that in this firewall rules for this virtual machine we are allowing RTP protocol and port to allow remote access to the virtual machine by either public or private IP address. Okay, we have discussed this before, so we are opening on the firewall the ports for the RTP, so we can able to communicate to this virtual machine using the remote desktop connection program. And here we can see that this is the IP address for the domain controller. This is the private IP address. We have two IP addresses. One is a private IP address inside the network. This will be static, and we have another one which is public IP address that will be accessed through the internet. And the public IP address, it is dynamic, it will be changed automatically. But as for the private IP address within the virtual network, it will be static. Okay, so this is the first domain controller and everything concerning it. And the second domain controller, we'll name it DC02, and this is a virtual machine. Its IP address will be 10.0.1.5. This will be a domain controller and also a DNS server. And we have the same firewall rules to allow RDP protocol, so we can able to remotely access this virtual machine. And we have also a private IP address for this virtual machine domain controller. It will be static, the private IP address will be static, and dynamic public IP address. So this is basically the two domain controllers. Okay, they will be created under the first subnet, which will be 10.0.1.0. okay, so all of this will be created under this subnet, and we will have a VPN gateway. Okay, the VPN gateway will have a subnet of 10.0.2.0/29, and the gateway will take IP address of 10.0.2.1. This gateway, VPN gateway, we will access our DC Comics virtual network through the internet through this VPN gateway. Okay, so this is not a router, this is a VPN gateway. I have mistaken it before. So this is a VPN gateway. Through the internet we can access this virtual network through this VPN gateway. So this is basically what we will do in this video. This is the DC Comics network. We have another graph. Let me show you all. This is another graph. Here we can discuss before something. Here we know this was the Marvel domain. Here we have our laptop, and then we can access the Azure portal website, and here we have different Azure configurable items. This is the Azure virtual machine configuration item. This is the firewall configuration item. This is the Azure IP address configuration item. This is the Azure network card configuration item. This is the Azure subnet configuration item. This is the Azure IP address space, our address namespace, for IP address space, sorry, for the network. Okay, and finally the Azure gateway. All of these are configurable items we can configure through the Azure portal website. Okay, and the Marvel domain was created on the Microsoft Data Center region US East. This is how we have created our Marvel domain and Marvel virtual network and Marvel virtual machines and Marvel virtual VPN. All of these are created on the Microsoft Data Center located in US East. Okay, so here this is the virtual machines we have created, 2 domain controllers and a virtual machine acting as a workstation. Okay, this is the IP addresses and the names, and this is the subnet created for under this, or this is the subnet that all of these virtual machines are created under it, and this is the gateway for or the VPN gateway for the Marvel domain. Okay, and this is the network address space, okay, for the Marvel domain, and the DNS servers for this domain as a whole. So these DNS servers are distributed to all of the network or subnets under the network space, okay, or the network address space. Okay, so this is basically what we have done with the Marvel domain, the previous 5 or 6 videos. So on this video, what we will do, we will here go and also create, we'll go to the laptop and the Azure portal page, and then we will have also the same configurable items, Azure configurable items, and then we will create our DC Comics domain on another region for Microsoft Data Center region US Central. This data center is in the US Central location, not US East. So we will create our DC Comics domain in Microsoft Data Center region US Central. Okay, and here this is our DC Comics domain, and this is our 2 domain controllers. This is the subnet, okay, that these 2 domain controllers are created under it. Okay, and this is the VPN for the DC Comics, and this is the VPN gateway, and this is the subnet for the gateway. Okay, and this is the network address space and the DNS servers that will be distributed to all of the subnets under this network space address. Okay, and another thing we have discussed before, that this laptop or this the laptop and the Azure portal page, all of these, okay, are considered or called the front end. Okay, this is, so here we can say that the laptop and the Azure website portal, okay, and all of these configurable items, this is called front end. This is the one that will appear for the user, so it's called front end. Okay, but as for the data center, okay, and the the DC Comics domain and the subnets and the virtual machines and the gateway and the network address space and the subnets, okay, all of these are called backend. So the data center and the virtual environment, all of these are called backend, because this doesn't appear for the user. So the laptop and the Azure portal page and the configurable items of Azure, these are called front end, and the data center and the virtual environment are called the back end. So this is basically what we will do in this lab. This is a general diagram and a detailed diagram before what we will do in this video. All of this we have done before with the with the Marvel domain, so we will not discuss it in details. We have done this before in the previous 7 or 6 videos, so we'll just repeat the process. Okay, so this is basically what we will do. So let's begin our video. So here we will begin entering the Azure portal page. So I just need also to tell you something, guys. Here we need to open this. Let me show you something. I need to show you something. Okay, so this is okay, and here you go, and this is the Azure Marvel. Okay, at the end we have 2 sites. We have Microsoft Data Center region US East and we have Microsoft Data Center region US Central. Okay, so this is Marvel domain and this is DC Comics domain. At the end we will make a VPN connecting both networks through using something called VNet peering or virtual network peering, and we will work also to make a VPN through the Azure VPN Gateway. So we have two ways to link these two networks, even through using virtual net peering, okay, virtual network peering, or through using Azure VPN Gateway. So this is just to take note. Now we will begin creating our DC Comics domain. We will need to go to the Azure portal page and then begin creating our first resource group. Sorry, we create a resource group for the DC Comics, okay, network. So as we said before, the first thing to do when you are dealing with the Azure cloud, to make an resource group, and after we make a resource group for the DC Comics, we will begin creating our DC Comics virtual network. So here we are making the resource group called DC domain. We will make this resource group in US Central. Okay, so this is two different locations. Okay, and then we will create. And then we'll make a refresh. As we can see, it will take a little bit of time until the resource group appears, but I will go. Let me show you all. Okay. Okay, so here and at the resource group, here is the DC domain, and then we will begin creating our first virtual network. So here we'll go to the resource group and then tell him add a virtual network. This will be our DC Comics virtual network. We have done this in the Marvel domain, so we repeat this process. Here we will give our DC Comics virtual network, we will give it a name. And then this we leave the address space, and then we will have our first subnet. Okay, we will name our first subnet, which will be 10.0.1.0/24, and we will name it DC domain IP net or something, anyway, IP range. Okay, and this range will be, or our first subnet will be 1. We'll leave everything as it is. Okay, and then we will create. So now I have created our first, or our DC Comics resource group, and then we create our DC Comics virtual network, and then we'll begin creating our first virtual machine in this DC Comics virtual network. Okay, which will be our first domain controller. Okay, in the DC Comics domain. Here we can see that this is the dashboard. I will show you in a separate video how we can play with this dashboard and customize it. Okay, but anyway, I think it will take a little bit of time. I need to pass it real quickly. So just a minute. Okay, after creating the virtual network, you need to pin it to dashboard, so it will appear here. Then we need to go to the DC domain resource group, and then go to the virtual network of DC Comics, which will be DC VNet, and put the DNS server's IP addresses in this DC Comics virtual network. Okay, this is some setting, I don't need it anyway. So just a moment. So we will go to the DC domain resource group, and then we'll go to the virtual network of the DC Comex, and then we will tell him to give or the DNS servers will put it in this DC virtual network configurable item or Azure configurable item DNS servers. So any virtual machine created under this virtual network, it will distribute the following IP addresses as DNS servers, okay? And these DNS servers are in the same time our two domain controllers, okay? So they are domain controllers and DNS servers as well. So any virtual machine created under the DC virtual network, it will the DNS servers will be distributed automatically to them, okay? How they will get this DNS servers from the DC virtual network configuration. So now we can go and this is the DC Comex resource group, and this is the virtual network. This is the address space, okay, and this is the subnets. We have only one subnet that we have created, and we have 251 IP addresses available, okay, to use, okay. So now we'll begin creating our first virtual machine in the DC Comex virtual network, and this virtual machine will be our first domain controller for our DC Comex domain. And here we'll begin creating this virtual machine. I will give it more RAM because I have encountered a lot of problems in the Marvel domain because the domain controllers RAM was not enough, so this made some performance issues for my domain controller. So here we will choose the resource group, and then we will name the virtual machine DC01, and then we will choose US Central, okay, or Central US. This is the location of the data center, okay. And we will have something called availability options, which is called, we will choose availability set. What is this option? I have discussed it before in a previous video, but I will discuss it again. Availability zone, what we mean by availability zone? Availability zone, in its description, it is saying that group 2 or more virtual machines in an availability set to ensure that at least one is available during planned or unplanned maintenance. What we how we can explain this? We can explain this through this graph. Here is the laptop, and this is the Azure Portal website, and this is the data center of Microsoft. Just a minute. Sorry guys, let's continue. Here we can see that it said that availability set is to group 2 or more virtual machines in an group, okay. So here we have 2 virtual machines or more in one group. So here we have these 3 virtual machines in a group, we call it availability set, okay. What is the reason, or what is the function of putting a group of virtual machines in an availability set? Is to tell Microsoft that when you have any planned or unplanned maintenance, we need one at least of these virtual machines to be up and running. How Microsoft will do this? By putting them in this group, Microsoft will ensure that, for example, if these 3 virtual machines, okay, are on one server, it will distribute it on more than one server. For example, if we have our DC Comex domain, it will be, for example, on this server, okay. So this server, we have our DC domain created on it, and we have our first domain controller created on it, and for example we have created our second domain controller in it. Okay, and after that we have created our availability set and put two domain controllers in this availability set. So what Microsoft will do, will take one of these servers. We have said before that we have created two domain controllers here, so we'll take one of them and put it on another server. Okay, so by this step it is ensuring, for example, if this server is down, then our second domain controller will be up and running, so our domain controller, so our DC Comics domain will not be down. Again, I repeat the process. These three virtual machines are, let's consider that they are on the same server. So these three virtual machines are on server number 1, and then we have created an availability set and put these three virtual machines in this availability set, okay, group. So as soon as we do this, Microsoft will redistribute the three virtual machines. Okay, we will not leave them on one server on the data center of the US East. It will put it on different servers. So if there is any maintenance plan for one of these servers, this will not affect or will not make our DC Comics domain down, because there is other servers that are up and running, and our domain controllers will be distributed among these servers. So if you have two domain controllers, we will have them distributed on two servers. They will not be on the same server. So how Microsoft will know that your virtual machines are very important? You need to create a group called availability set and put two or more virtual machines in it. So as soon as you create this availability set and put one or more two virtual machines in it, it will know that these virtual machines are important, and if they are on the same server, it will distribute it on one or more servers to make it more available. Okay, or if any emergency happens, or if you have any maintenance plan on one of the servers, it will not affect the other server and the domain will be up and running. This is called availability set. There is another thing called, sorry guys, we have another thing called sorry, just a minute, here you go. We have another thing called availability zone. Okay, the same concept applies here. Availability zone, it's a unique physical location within Azure region. Each zone is made up of one or two data centers equipped by independent power, cooling, and networking. To ensure resiliency, there are a minimum of 3 separate zones in all enabled regions. The physical separation of availability zones within a region protects applications and data center from data from data center failures. Zone redundant services replicate your applications and data across availability zones to protect from single point of failure. What we will do by this, for example, if you have this, we have our domain, DC Comics domain. It is created on two regions. For example, if you have created, or we have created our DC Comics domain, and we have created our first domain controller in one region, and the second domain controller in another region. Okay, so we can put them in something called availability zone. This is like availability set. As I said before here, availability set, this can be done within one data center region. So this can be done in US East region. As for the availability zone, this is the same as availability set, but it can be done through two regions or more than two regions. Okay, so the same concepts applied. This also, you are telling Microsoft that you need this virtual machine or this domain controller to be up and running, so it will replicate it to another region. So if this whole region, or for example, if the US East data center region is down, okay, your first domain controller, okay, you have for example, two domain controllers, one of them in the US center region, okay, he will put your second domain controller in the second region. Okay, so this will ensure also that you have more redundancy. Okay, so this is the same concept. Availability set, it is within one region, and availability zone, it is within more than one region, and they have the same concept, is to make your servers available. Okay, so this is the availability set. We will make availability set, okay, and then we will name it. So here we are telling Microsoft Azure that we will create an availability set and we will put our 2 domain controllers in it to ensure that at least one of these domain controllers will be up and running 24/7. Okay, so here we will choose Windows Server Data Center, and we will leave the default recommendation of Microsoft. We leave this virtual machine to have 1 virtual CPU and 3.5 gigabyte of memory. Okay, so we will leave it as it is. Okay, we need just to get here more clearly. Just a minute. Okay, again. So here we have choose, or we left the virtual machine, and then we have our administrator account. We will name it local administrator account. We will name it Raouf, and the password, and they will have our firewall rules to allow the RDP protocol. I have already allowed all of the protocols: SSH protocol, RDP protocol, HTTP protocol, and HTTPS protocol. If you plan to have web servers, or if you want to connect to the virtual machine using SSH protocol, here is the hard disk. It's premium SSD. We will leave everything for the default. And then next, you will leave everything for the default, and at the end he will give you this virtual machine will cost you how much per hour. Okay, so it will cost me about 12 cents. Okay, per hour. Okay, it will cost me about 12 cents per hour. Remember, before in Marvel the machine costs me only 1 cent per hour. Okay, so this is more, but this will ensure that my virtual machine doesn't have any performance issues. Here we will pin to dashboard. Everything you need to appear on the dashboard, you need to tell him to pin it to the dashboard. So if we make refresh, we can see that you have a lot of things appearing in our dashboard. Okay, I will show you all a video on how to customize this dashboard. Okay, so now we will go to our first created virtual machine in the DC Comics virtual network, and then we will begin installing Active Directory domain services and promote it to be a domain controller. Here we will connect to it through using the remote desktop connection. By clicking connect, he will download the RDP connection or the remote desktop connection. Okay, here we will go to the networking, and we will tell him to have our private IP address to be static. We have done this before in the domain, in the Marvel domain. So here we will go to the private IP address and tell him to make it as a static. And as for the public IP address, we will leave it to be dynamic. So here we will connect to our first virtual machine in the DC Comics virtual network through using the remote desktop connection. We can download it by clicking on connect in the Azure virtual machine configuration, and then we will type the local administrator password, and then we can click yes. So now we'll begin doing some changes. We will make this PC and control panel and users files and network icons to appear on the desktop, and then we will begin working with the PowerShell scripts. Okay, but I will not do this now. We will begin installing the Active Directory domain services and then promote this server to be a domain controller. DC Comics domain will have all of our heroes as users. We will have Superman, Batman, and all of them. Okay, so here we will copy the scripts, okay, that we will use later after installing the Active Directory domain services and promote this machine to be a domain controller. Okay, so here we personalize the desktop, and we have our this PC and different icons to appear on the desktop themes, and then we will have our desktop icon setting. We will have computer and user files and control panel and network to appear on the desktop. Here I'm just revising the setting for this virtual machine. We have the remote management enabled, the remote desktop enabled. Here I will increase the virtual RAM for this operating system, and we will adjust the visual effects to have best performance setting, and then we will have our virtual RAM increased, and we'll put the virtual RAM on the C drive, and we will have it double. For example, here our physical RAM, it is 3.5, so you need to have your virtual RAM to be double it, so you have to make it 7. Okay, so I make it from 5 GB to 7 GB. So this is within the recommendation of Microsoft. You need to have your virtual RAM to be double your physical RAM. This is the best practice or Microsoft recommendation for the virtual RAM. Here I am copy and paste my folder that contains the scripts that we will use to create the DC Comics domain users, groups, computers, and all of this. This is also contains the group policy templates that we will use. We have been, or as I said before, we are repeating the same process we have done with Marvel domain. We have done the same steps, so we are repeating the same process with the DC Comics domain. So we will not discuss in details what we are doing best, because we have previously discussed it when we are where we have been working with the Marvel domain. So here it's taking a lot of time to upload my folder that contains my scripts. Anyway, we open the server manager and then begin installing the Active Directory domain services, and strangely, okay, I thought that I can't install Wins service within an Azure environment, but I have succeeded in doing this. Okay, in the DC Comics domain I didn't succeed this when I was working with the Marvel domain, but anyway, you can install Wins service or Wins server role on an Azure cloud environment. Okay, so I'm telling him to not to open the server manager automatically when I log in. Okay, I don't need to start it automatically, so I just need to check this so he will not open it every time. I don't need it to open it automatically for me. I will open it manually. Okay, so we can just pass this real quickly. Okay, so here again, sorry, anyway, we'll open manage and then add roles and features. Then we will tell him next and next and then next. Then we will install Active Directory domain services, and then we can install also the Wins server role. Okay, add features. Next, and then I have tell him to install NetFrame, but he is asking me if you need to install NetFrame 3.5 you need to have the CD of the Windows attached or inserted in the virtual machine, so I don't know how to do this, so I told him not to install the NetFrame 3.5 anyway. So I'm installing now the Active Directory domain services and the Wins server role. So now we'll tell him to promote this server to a domain controller. Then we'll create our new forest, and we'll create our first domain in this forest, which we will call it DCDM, DC Comex domain, DCDM.local, DC Comex domain, DC for DC Comex, DM for domain, okay, and local. It will name it DCDM.local. So we'll create a new forest, and this forest we will create in this forest our first domain, which will be DCDM.local. And then this domain controller will be also a DNS server, and it will be a global catalog. We have discussed before what is a DNS server and what is a global catalog server. Anyway, I can show you also a little bit of a graph concerning the DNS. Just a minute. We need to have the DNS. Okay, so what is basically a DNS? This is our domain controller, and it will be a DNS, and this is our workstations. Every workstation will have a name and the IP address, so they can able to communicate. If you need the workstations to communicate with each other, every workstation should have a unique number. So this number, it's called an IP address. So we have IP addresses, and also every virtual or every workstation will have a name and an IP address. Okay, so what is the rule, or what is the function of the DNS? DNS changes the name, the IP of the workstation to a name. Why we use DNS in the first place? Because mostly we don't, as humans, we don't remember numbers correctly, or we don't remember them more. So if you have a number, for example, like this one, it's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 digits, you will not remember them easily. Okay, so humans remember names easily. You can remember PC Marvel 03 than to remember 192.168.1.12. so if you want to communicate, for example, PC Marvel 05, you need this workstation to communicate with PC Marvel 03. You need to know the IP address. As I said before, the IP address is not easily remembered by humans. So what we will do, I remember the name. So I am telling him I need to communicate with PC Marvel 03. So the DNS intervenes here. it tells or it translates the name of this virtual machine to an IP address, and then let me communicate with this virtual machine or this workstation. So again, PC Marvel 05 needs to communicate with PC Marvel 03. So from PC Marvel 05 I will type PC Marvel 03. This is just an example. So PC Marvel 03 will go and tell this to the DNS. So the PC Marvel 05 will type PC Marvel 03. This name will go to the DNS. It will check its data, okay, and we will see if I have PC Marvel 03. This is the name and this is the IP address, and then I will, as a DNS server, will let you, or I will reply to you with the IP address of the PC Marvel 03, and then you can communicate with him directly. So this is basically what the DNS does. It translates the name to an IP address. So the workstation PC Marvel 05 will ask the DNS server to communicate with PC Marvel 03. So here he will check his tables or his data. He can know that PC Marvel 03, its IP address is 192.168.1.12. He will retrieve or will return this IP address to me, and then I can communicate with PC Marvel 3 or 4 as I wish. Okay, so this is basically a DNS. Its function, as for the global catalog, I said before, the function of the global catalog, so I will not discuss it again. I have discussed it before, and now we will type the directory services restore mode. I also have discussed this before. And now we will tell him next. Then this is the NetBIOS domain name. We leave everything for the default. Next. And we also have discussed this before. And then this is also the database location, the sysvol location, and the log files location. All of this we have discussed before also in the Marvel domain videos. Okay, and now we will begin installing the Active Directory domain services. We have already installed them. Now we are promoting this server to be a domain controller. This will be our first domain controller in our dcdm.local domain. Okay, so just a minute, or we can say this is the first domain controller in DC Comics domain. DC Comics domain, it is named dcdm.local. So now we have the process of promoting this PC or this server to be a domain controller. So now this is the process of promoting it to be a domain controller. Anyway, we can go a little bit further. So now it's telling it that we need to restart the virtual machine because it is promoted to be a domain controller. So now we will go and connect again to our first virtual machine in the DC Comics virtual network. So here we are using our local administrator account. We need to type it right. I have typed the password incorrect. So now we can see that it's already it is promoted to be a domain controller. And then here I am copying the necessary scripts to begin working for creating the various items for the Active Directory. The Active Directory or DC Comics Active Directory users, groups, organizational units, computers, robots, everything. Okay, and the login scripts. Okay, and the backgrounds, everything. So I will copy them and paste them in the virtual machine. I have done this before, but it was taking too long because it contains a lot of data. Okay, so I am just copying them piece by piece, or some parts, okay, or part by part. Okay, so here we can just pass this a little bit quickly. So here I have created a folder and I will put in it all of my scripts. So here I begin creating my custom console. Okay, we have discussed before what is a custom console. A custom console, it is a way that we can gather a lot of consoles in one. What I mean, when you want to configure the Active Directory users, you need to open the Active Directory user console. You need to configure DNS, you need to open the DNS console. Okay, if you need to change something in group policy, you need to open the group policy console. So to gather all of them in one console, we will open start and then run, and then we'll type MMC, and then it will open one console, and then we can add different things like Active Directory, like DNS, like everything we need to configure. It will be in one window in one console. Okay, instead of opening different consoles with different windows. Okay, so here we are gathering all of our configurable items in one place. So here I'm adding the computer management, the services. Okay, we can add a lot of things here. This is what I am rolling here. This is all the things we can add in this console. Okay, so I'm just adding the Active Directory users console, the DNS console, the group policy management console, the event viewer if I need to check something relating to this operating system, errors or something, and wins. Okay, if I need to configure the wins. Okay, something like DNS, it's and disk management if I need to configure or see anything related to the hard disk of this domain controller. Wins, it is, as I said before, it is an old version of the DNS. It was used before DNS appeared. Okay, so this is basically an old version of the DNS, and it's still used in some environments. Okay, so here we will save this console, DC domain console, and then we will save. Okay, and then the first thing we need to do is to create something called reverse DNS. We have said before the function of DNS is to change or to give you the IP address, okay, for the PC by giving him its name. So DNS, you give him the name and he will return or give you the IP address of the workstation. Okay, I said before, because remembering the name is much easier for a human than remembering numbers. Okay, so the reverse DNS, okay, reverse DNS, what you'll do, it will give you the name of the PC if you give him the IP address of the machine. So it's basically different than the normal DNS. The DNS, it gives you the IP of the machine when you give him the name of the PC. Okay, so for example, if I need to communicate with PC Marvel 03, I will type it, and then as soon as I press enter, this name will communicate, or I will communicate with the DNS server and ask him to let me communicate with PC Marvel 03. He will check his database and see the IP address of the PC Marvel 03 and return back the IP address to me, and then I can be able to communicate with PC Marvel 03. Okay, so this is the normal DNS. The reverse DNS, it's the opposite. You will give him the IP address of the machine and he will give you the name. Okay, so this is the reverse DNS. Anyway, I have done a little mistake because this is not okay. Just a minute. Here what I'm doing, just a moment. Here what I did, again, sorry. Here I'm just configuring something related to the DNS. I'm telling him to have some DNS servers added to the forward zone. What is the forward zone? This is something when you, for example, tell him, or for example, if you are in the DC comics domain and you need, for example, to access www.google.com, it will ask the DNS in your domain, do you know what is www.google.com? So if the DNS doesn't know what is www.google.com, it will ask another server that you specify in its configuration to ask it what is www.google.com. This is called forward DNS servers, okay, or forward DNS zone. Okay, we will see that in a moment, so we can make it from here, its properties, and then here we'll get something called forwards. What is this forwards? Okay, you will assign or tell him, for example, if, for example, here I am a workstation and I ask my DNS server to communicate with www.google.com. If he sees his database and he doesn't know what is www.google.com or what is the IP address of www.google.com, it will forward it to another DNS, external DNS server, which we will specify in this space or in this box. I will tell you, I will put here the DNS of Google. Okay, so for example, if I need to communicate with www.google.com and the DNS, my DNS server doesn't know the IP address of www.google.com, it will forward it to the DNS server or the IP address of the DNS server of Google, which is 8888, and then it will ask him what is www.google.com. The DNS server of Google, which is 8888, will return back the IP address of www.google.com. So this is done for the forwards. Okay, so again, this is our forwards. This is the DNS or external DNS servers that our local DNS server will forward any DNS requests, okay, if it fails to resolve it to an IP address. Okay, anyway, pass this real quickly, and then we'll begin creating our, just a minute. Here I have mistakenly done or created my reverse zone. Here we will create it again, new zone, okay, and tell him next, and then it's a primary zone, and everything will leave everything to the defaults, IP version 4 reverse zone, and then we put our network ID, which is 10.0.1. This is our network ID. We have done this all before when we were creating the Marvel domain. Okay, this is our Winds server, and it's working. Okay, and now this is the next step. You should not ever or never ever do this. Okay, you should not go to the network setting for the server and then add the DNS server setting or DNS server IP manually in the network connection properties. You should not do this, okay, because the Azure configuration or the Azure cloud will do this for you automatically. So you should not ever, never ever go to the connection setting, okay, for the server and then add the DNS the IP version 4 DNS service to it manually through opening the properties of the network connection and add it manually. You should not do this, okay. This is not correct. It will make problems for you. And should not also put the Winds server through the network connection properties, okay. This should be done through the Azure virtual network configuration, okay. You should not do this from here, okay. So this is not correct. You should not do this, okay. Or you should not even also add the Winds server through playing with the network connection properties, okay. So this is not correct, okay. So anyway, I will pass it this because this is not correct, as I said before. As for the Winds, you should not do this. I have mistaken. I wasn't able to connect to the domain controller after playing with the network connection setting and changing the DNS manually through working with the network connection setting. I wasn't able to connect. So I make a restart and begin working again. Okay, I thought I would have some problem, but I began working with the serial connection or the serial console. I have discussed before what is a serial console. This allows you to connect to the virtual machine before it enters or before it loads the operating system. So anyway, this is also not the problem. Anyway, so here I will open the PowerShell and begin applying my scripts, okay, to create the domain DC Comics domain organization units, users, computers, objects, user objects, computer objects, security groups objects, okay. So here we can see that there is a problem, okay. Here the location of the script, okay, this is the line, this is a line, PowerShell script line, okay. So it's saying that the scripts are in D Marvel domain so and so. So this is not correct. I will not work from the D. The folder of the scripts is on the C desktop, so I need to change the location of the script to be C so and so, not D Marvel domain. So we will change it all in all of these lines in the PowerShell script, because here I am in C users care of, not D Marvel domain. Okay, I'm on the C desktop. So right click the PowerShell and run it as administrator. You don't need to go here. I'm just trying to go to the folder that contains these scripts by changing directories, okay, in the PowerShell module, okay. But here I'm just changing the location, okay. And now here I will go to the folder that contains my scripts, which is desktop and then DC domain. This is the folder that contains my scripts, and then I will begin applying the PowerShell line or PowerShell command line. Okay, and then we will open the DC domain. We will see that we have our organizational units created. Okay, let's revise with you a little bit how this is done. I have done this in a graph. Just a moment. So let me show you all how this is done. Just a moment. So just a minute. Power group policy, permissions, DC comics, section capture. Just a minute, I need to show you all how these scripts are done. Okay, permissions, PowerShell automation. Okay, so here basically we have our PowerShell script. Okay, it will create organizational units. It will read the names of the organizational units and their location from an Excel sheet. So the PowerShell goes and see the names of the organizational units and their location from this Excel sheet, and then it will begin creating them. The same applies. PowerShell script, it will go to an Excel sheet that contains the security groups names and location, and then it will create the Active Directory groups. And the same applies for the users, and the same applies for the computers, and the same applies for the computers and robots. We have the robots the same. The robots and the computers are the same. So we need first to create the organization units, and then we'll begin creating one by one. So this is the steps of how the PowerShell script will work. Okay, so let's continue. Here we can see that we have created our organizational units. Then we will begin creating our users, okay, or DC Comics users, through using another PowerShell script. So here we'll do a little change in the script, because also the location of the script, it's not in D Marvel, it is in another place. It's on the desktop. Okay, so I need to change the location. And also the script, I used it before in the Marvel domain, so I need to tell him to create the users on the DCDM domain, not the Marvel domain. So here I'm changing the location of the script, okay, to be on the C Kara of desktop. This is the new location, and I tell him to create users in the DCDM.local domain, not in Marvel domain. We'll see that in a moment. Here we can see that in the script it's Marvel.local. No, we need him to create it on DCDM.local. Okay, and then we begin creating the users. So now we have a lot of users created. All of these are real names for DC Comics heroes. We can see that we have Batman, Batwoman, Superman, Superwoman, Batgirl, Supergirl. Okay, these are all users will be created. Okay, the users and also the security groups. Okay, a lot of things will be created in the DC Comics universe. Here we can see that we have, for example, here we have Abensur. Okay, this is a user in the DC Comics domain. Aquaman, the famous Aquaman. Batgirl, Batman, Batwoman, Ben 10. Okay, all of these are Active Directory DC Comics heroes. Okay, Alfred, the assistant or the butler of Batman. Wonder Woman. Okay, and here there is something in the script of the security groups. Here I am changing the location of the security groups to be created. I'm telling him to put the security groups of DC Comics to be in the organizational units of the DC Comics domain. Okay, this is the location. I'm changing the location where the security groups will be created. It should be created in the folder which is named, or in the organizational unit which is named security groups, under DCSH organization unit, under domain DCDM DC local. Okay, this is the location. This line will create the security groups. So we have created the organizational units, we have created the users, we will create the security groups. Here we can see that the security groups are created. Okay, we have a lot of security groups. Some are by the species of the DC Comics heroes. For example, we have a group called DC Atlantean. Here we will have Aquaman because he is from Atlantis. We will have Kryptonic. This is a group that will contain Kryptonian people like Superman. We have groups created based on the department, like DC head of departments, like DC IT, okay, group, like DC or users. This is a group that will contain all of the DC Comics users. Okay, and we have a lot of things. Okay, we are for example, we have here a group to categorize DC Comics internet access people. For example, here we have a group for moderate internet users. Here we have a group for internet admins. We have internet advanced users, which has more access to internet than internet moderate users. And at the end we have DC Comics internet basic users. This will have the least internet access. Okay, so we can group users according to different criteria. We can group users according to their differences. Okay, differences as a species or as a country or one, so and so, or according to the department, or according to the program or software that we need them to have different levels of access. Okay, so anyway, So here I am still, we need the second step to put our DC Comics users in their respective groups. Okay, so there is also a script for this, but anyway, I am now I'm going to create the computers object. Okay, so there is two scripts. Okay, one for creating the computers Active Directory or Active Directory computer objects, and the other one for the robots. Okay, the robots I here mean by robots, they are computers as well. So we have two lines of PowerShell scripts to create two computer objects. Okay, or several computer objects. Anyway, we have been discussing before that every department will have certain robots allocated to it. Okay, we can consider robots to be mobile computers. Okay, so we'll have every department will have its respective robots allocated to them or assigned to them. Anyway, so now we have created the robots and then we have created the computers. So here we can see that we have robots. Okay, we have discussed also this in the Marvel domain, the same concept. Okay, then we have terminals. This is the workstations, and the servers are the servers, and the robots are computers but mobile. Okay, we have servers here. We have one of them, it's not correct, PC DC30. This should not be in the servers, it should be in the terminals, which resembles or which is like workstations. So here we will go and put it in terminals. And then we have users. So now I'll create a user. Okay, this is a user for me. I will create a user by my name. Okay, I will name it first name Karim Raouf, and I will be I have a user Active Directory username, and I will put it in the group of DCIT. This is a group that will contain all of the DC Comics IT personnel. I will be myself and Batman and Superman and Abensur. We will all be in the DCIT group, which is a group created for DC Comics IT personnel. And then this group, we will put it in several built-in Active Directory groups, so we can have full access or full control over the domain. Okay, this Active Directory built-in groups, as soon as you are a member of this Active Directory built-in groups, I will show you all what are these groups. If you are a member of this built-in Active Directory groups, these are there by default. When you install Active Directory, you should have full control over the domain. Okay, the whole domain, you can do everything you like. Okay, anyway, now I have created my username, but I forgot to put it in the DCIT group. Now I will use my third PowerShell script to put my several DC Comics users in their respective groups. For example, we need to put Aquaman in the DC Comics Aquarian group, and we need to put Superman in the DC Comics Atlantean or Kryptonian group. Okay, anyway, we will open the security group. We can see after doing the script that we have here members Doomsday. Okay, it's in the DC Alien group. Here in the IT, we can see that I am Abensur, Batman, Karim Raouf, Superman. All of them are in the DCIT group. Okay, what we'll do here, I will get all of the IT personnel and put them in the organizational unit, which is called admins. Why I am doing this? because I need the IT personnel to be in a separate organizational unit, okay, because this organizational unit will not have any group policies applied to it. I need all of the IT personnel to have no restrictions whatsoever to be implemented on them. So this organizational unit, I will make it, or I will not have any group policy applied to it except for the default domain policy and some policies, but I am putting them in a separate organizational unit so I can make myself or make the IT personnel away from applying any certain group policies that may restrict their access. Okay, anyway, so I am moving all of my IT personnel to the admins organizational unit. Here I am moving all of them. We have 4: Superman, Batman, Abensur, and myself in the admins organizational unit. So now what we will do here, we will put the DCIT group in the default or some default group policy. We will put the DCIT group or Active Directory Security Group to be a member of some default Active Directory security groups. I will show you all a graph concerning this. Just a minute. Permissions. Okay, I don't think this is permissions. Just a minute. I think this is permissions. Just a minute. Just a minute. No, this is not the permissions. Okay, group policy. I think this is not also related to the group policy. Just a minute. No, this is not the group policy. Anyway, just a minute. DC Comics graph. Just a minute. I have it here. Admin IT group. So anyway, here you have your Active Directory. We have a couple of Active Directory built-in groups. These are created when you install Active Directory domain services and promote the server to be a domain controller. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have Active Directory built-in security group named administrators. We have an Active Directory built-in group named domain admins. We have an Active Directory built-in group named enterprise admins. We have another Active Directory built-in group named schema admins. Okay, the enterprise admins and the domain admins are a member of the administrators group. Okay, so here my DCIT group, not Marvel, DCIT group, Active Directory Security Group, I will put them as a member of the administrators, the domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins. So by putting myself to be a member of the administrators, domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, I have full control over the Active Directory structure. Okay, and actually I can put myself directly in the administrators. I will have full control, but I prefer to put them in to be a member of the administrators, the domain admins, the enterprise admins, and the schema admins. So by putting myself to be a member of all of these built-in Active Directory groups, I will have full control over the domain Active Directory or the Active Directory domain structure. Okay, so let's do this. Here we can see that the administrators, domain admins, and enterprise admins are members of the administrators. So here I will put the DCIT group to be a member of administrators. And then we will put also the DCIT to be a member of domain admins. I said before, we need to close the local administrator for this Windows operating system and to use not only to disable it and rename it and give it a strong password, and then use a different account to make all your changes in your Active Directory. So this is why we are putting the DCIT to be a member of the administrator's Active Directory group, so we can be able to use my username, my Superman name, my Batman names to do the administrative things to the Active Directory and to close the Kera of local administrator account for this server. Okay, here we will add DCIT. Okay, IT. And now we have DC all users. This is a group that will contain all of my DC Comics Active Directory users. Why I have a group to put all of my DC Comics domain in it? So if I need to apply a group policy to be applied to all of my DC Comics users, I can use this group. Okay, so I just need to pass it real quickly because this will contain a lot of things. Anyway, just pass it real quickly. Just a minute. Again. So here we have finished this. So now here we need to apply a login script to all of the DC Comics domain. This login script will add the Arabic and English keyboard and a lot of things to be done to the user when he logs into the DC Comics domain. Here, I am copying the some group policy templates. Okay, that I need to install them. Okay, to my DC Comics group policy management console. Why I have a group of templates of Active Directory? I have a group of group policy templates. As I said before, group policy, it's a way to control the Windows setting for every workstation or server in the domain. So these group policies or templates, I have some ready made Windows group policies. Okay, and not only Windows, I have Chrome and a lot of things. So the group policy will not only control the Windows, it can control the Chrome, the Firefox, the classic shell, a lot of things. So this group policy templates, I will copy them and put them in the default Windows group policy location. Okay, I will put them so I can have a group, or I have a lot of group policies to apply it to my domain. Here we will do something here, just a minute. Here we are doing or creating what is called group policy central location. Okay, our group policy central store. What we are doing here, we will go to the folder of sysvol, and under sysvol, okay, the folder of sysvol, we have discussed before what is the folder of sysvol. Under sysvol, under policies, we will create a folder that contains our Windows group policy objects. Okay, the default Windows group policy objects, it is in C Windows System 32 policy definitions. This is the default location for the Windows group policies. We will take a copy of this folder and put them in under the C Windows System 32 sysvol policies, and then we will put policy definitions under policies, policies which was under sysvol. Okay, so this will be the new location of the group policy objects. It will not be in C Windows System 32 then policy definitions. It will be changed to C Windows System 32 sysvol policies, then policy definitions. While we are doing this, I will show you all a small graph. While we are doing this, is called, or this changing of the location from changing of the location to be under sysvol policies, this is called creating a group policy central store. I will show you. I have discussed this before, but I will show you all what we mean by central store. Just in a minute. Okay, so here we can see that here we can see that it's saying that the group policy central store is a central location to store all group policy template files, okay, or group policy objects. Okay, this eliminates the need for admins to load and open group policy templates files on systems used to manage group policy. Here it is the default location of the group policy. It is C Windows policy definitions. So we will take a copy of this folder and put it under sysvol folder policies. Okay, why we are doing this? So we can centralize the location of the group policies, because for example if you have a lot of domain controllers with different operating systems, so for example if these are 4 domain controllers, okay, so we will have 4 group policy locations. Okay, see Windows here and here and here and here. So which one it will be applied, or which one you should apply if you have 4 domain controllers and this is the 5th one, so you don't know. So you need here to unify the location of which group policy to be applied. So we will take the latest operating system and the latest group policies, okay, and we will put a copy, we will take a copy of the latest group policy from C Windows policy definitions on server 2019 and put them under sysvol policies, and then this will be the location of all of the other domain controllers to take their group policy from. So not every server will apply its own group policy. No, it will go to the Windows Server 2019, which is the latest operating system, the latest group policies. It will apply its group policy, or will take its group policy from this server. Okay, so this is called group policy central store. The group policy central store is a central location to store of group policy template files. This eliminates the needs for admins to load and open group policy template files on systems used to manage group policy. Some benefits: ensure all admins are using the same group policy template files, loads the same templates from any computer, make it easier to manage and update template files by having only one location to update, reduce template files in the sysvol, and reduces replication traffic between domain controllers. I have discussed this before in previous videos, so I will not discuss it, I just discussed it very quickly. So here where we are doing this, we will create a new group policy central store, and then we will take the bunch or the group policy templates that we have for Windows and Chrome and so on, and we put it in this location. Okay, so here we are copying the C Windows, and then we will have the policy definitions, and we'll copy it and put it under the sysvol, okay, policies, sysvol policies, and then remember the folder that it's called group policy templates that I have on my desktop. This folder contains the one that I'm copying now. This folder contains not only Windows group policy templates, but Chrome group policy templates, Firefox group policy templates. We will copy all of these group policy templates, okay, and put them in the new group policy central store location. So from this place, new group policy location, we can create group policies to manage Windows setting, not only Windows setting, but Chrome setting, Firefox setting, a lot of things. We have discussed this before, so please return to my previous videos when we were creating the Marvel domain. I have discussed this before. And also we have a login script, as I said before. I need it to be applied to you need to have a login script to be applied to all of my Active Directory users. For example, if I have an Active Directory user that logs in for the first time, I need him I need to apply on him some a kind of script. So when he logs in, he need to have his keyboard layout installed, he need the time zone to be changed, he need to have certain things installed. So all of this will be done through a login script. This login script will be attached to the Active Directory user in a certain process. I will show you all, but anyway, I will first, here we have now our Marvel group policy templates. We will extract it and take a copy from this folder and put them in the new sysvol policy definitions location. So let's do this. So here we have our new group policy central location. Okay, we have it under sysvol policy definitions. We'll take a copy of these templates and put them in sysvol policy definitions. So we'll copy it. This is a group policy templates for Windows, Firefox, and a lot of programs. Then we'll put it in our Windows group policy location, which is changed from C Windows policy definitions to C Windows 32 sysvol policy definitions. So we'll copy here, copy and paste. So now when we open our group policy management console, we can see that we have a lot of group policy templates for Windows and Firefox and a lot of programs. So we can control not only the Windows setting but other programs setting like Firefox and Google Chrome. And this is the login script that we needed to be applied on every user logging into my DC domain. So the 3 lines, it will let this PC icon appear on the desktop of the user and change the name of this PC to the computer name. So this is the first 3 lines, and the upcoming lines like this, it will add the language, keyboard layout, the time zone for Cairo, and a lot of things. And all of these registry keys will be in a folder named backgrounds, and this folder should be shared. Okay, anyway, I need to show you all a small graph also explaining this process, or the login script process. So let me show you all how this is done. Just a minute, I need to have just a minute. I think here I have sysvol folder, okay, sysvol policy, my computer bad process. Okay, so anyway, I think this is it. Just a minute. No, this is another thing. Just a minute, guys. So we'll have my computer process, my computer bad process. Here you go. Just a minute. Okay, so here, guys, we have our we have our script. Here it goes. Okay, this is the 3 lines we have discussed, and this is the couple of registry keys. I need them to be applied on the user. The registry keys are in this location. It is in a folder called backgrounds. This folder should be shared so Active Directory users can reach it. Active Directory users should have access rights on background folders to be able to see the registry keys so the my computer .bat can run them. So this is the script. It's called my computer.bat. It will run a couple of commands, and then it will run some registry keys. These registry keys are in a certain folder. This folder is shared, and we have given the Active Directory users some right on this folder. Okay, and this is the location. Okay, and this is the folder, and this script should be added. Okay, the my computer.bat, we should open every Active Directory user properties, and in the login script field we should add my computer.bat. Okay, my computer.bat will be added, okay, in the sysvol scripts folder. So it will be in C Windows 32, C Windows, then System 32, then sysvol, then scripts, and then this will be under it will be my computer.bat. So we need to have every user to put in the field, every user the Active Directory to put my computer.bat in the field of login script. Okay, and where is my computer.bat? Where is the location? It will be under the net login. Okay, it can be here, which is C Windows sysvol scripts. It have certain, this is the name of the folder, and this is the share name of the folder, and this is also another share name of the folder, and this is here. Active Directory user should have right on this folder, on the sysvol folder, to run the my computer.bat file, shared by default, so it can be accessed but hidden. Okay, so here we can put, here we can see that the net login folder has changed to point to sysvol folder called scripts. So we can put it in C Windows System 32 scripts, or put it in the domain then net login from here, or the same. Okay, so we have a couple of steps. First of all, this is the script. It will contain some commands, it will contain some registry keys to be implemented. These registry keys are in a certain folder. This folder should be shared, and we should give our Active Directory users rights to read and execute from this folder. This folder contains the registry keys, okay, and this script should be attached to every Active Directory user through typing mycomputer.bat in the Active Directory user properties, and the location of mycomputer.bat should be in the net login, okay, or in the sysvol scripts, okay. And this also, the sysvol script should be shared, and the Active Directory user should have the right to access the sysvol folder and read and execute from it. So this is simply the process of the implementation of the login script. So we can see it here in a small graph. Here is the Active Directory users, the login script, okay. This is mycomputer.bat. Active Directory user should have rights on this folder to run mycomputer.bat. This is under mycomputer.bat sysvol scripts folder, and then shared by default, so it can be accessed but hidden. And mycomputer.bat will contain some lines that contains some registry keys that are on another folder called background. It should be shared so Active Directory users can reach it, and Active Directory users should have rights on the background folder to be able to see the registry keys so the computer.bat can run them, okay. So this is basically the process of the implementation of the login script. So we will change the location, okay. So the share folder, okay, it's not Marvel, it will be DC01, and we have a folder called backgrounds. This folder is on the desktop. We will share it right now and give our Active Directory users some rights to read and execute on it. So now we'll copy this. We will copy this mycomputer.bat and then run and put it under sysvol folder, okay, and then put it under scripts and then mycomputer.bat. So this is the location of the script. We need to put it in every Active Directory user properties. I will show you all how this is done. We will select all of our Active Directory users by one selection, Control A, and then properties, and then at the profile tab we will check login script and put mycomputer.bat. And then remember that we have my IT personnel also. We need to apply to them the login script. So now here we need to share the folder of backgrounds, okay. This is the folder that will contain the login scripts, so it will contain the registry keys that our login script will be directed to run it from. As I said before, mycomputer.bat will run a couple of registry keys that are in another folder, and this folder should be shared and user have rights on this folder. So here we will copy the registry keys, which will be language and so on. So we will copy them all, okay, with the backgrounds and a couple of files, and then we will go and put them or create a folder named backgrounds and share it and put rights on it, okay. So now we will open the folder that contain my scripts, and I will put or create a folder named backgrounds and put all of my registry keys in it. My registry keys that my login script will go and implement them from the folder of backgrounds. Okay, so here we have our folder, we have our scripts. We need to share the folder and put the correct or the right permissions on it, the NTFS permissions and the SMB share permissions. We have discussed before why we put two type of permissions and they are identical, just to be more secure. It's like having a safe with two keys. Okay, so anyway, I need to put this real quickly. I don't bother you all with the copy process. Anyway, so here we have our background folder. Okay, we need to share it. Okay, so as you see here, this will be the location of the script. It's pointing to the backgrounds folder that contains our login scripts, that contains our registry keys that our login script will implement. So here we will share it. Okay, and we will have three groups on it. We will have our DC IT group, the DC all users group, we remove everyone, and we will have we have domain users group. Okay, we will give domain users and DC all users read, write, and we will give the DC IT full control. This will be on the SMB share permissions and the NTFS share permissions. I have done this before actually in the Marvel domain videos, so please refer to my videos for more, or the previous videos for more info. Okay, so here we have our SMB share permissions, and then we will have our NTFS share permissions. Domain users, this is an Active Directory built-in group that contains by default all of your Active Directory users. Okay, so this is or the same as my custom Active Directory security group that is called DC_all users. The same groups are with the same function. They contain all of the Active Directory user accounts. Okay, so here we have our IT to have full control over the folder, and the domain users and DC all users to have read and execute. This is NTFS for SMB to have read. So anyway, until this point we have finished a couple of things. We have created the Active Directory users and the Active Directory users objects, computers, Active Directory central store location, everything. The next step, we will begin implementing the group policies and a lot of things. So until I see you all the upcoming video, hope this video was informative for you all, and I would like to thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.